everybody, welcome back. So in the previous video we looked at rest parameters and basically how we can use them in our functions to be able to pass in an infinite number of parameters essentially, and we can basically manipulate an array to work out what was in there and do something with it, alright, so to speak. In this video I want to look at what is referred to as spread syntax. And basically, what this really achieves for us in ECMAScript 6 is the ability to basically take an iterable, which I haven't really defined what an iterable is in ECMAScript 6 yet, but essentially for the purpose of this video, just take an array, alright? There are other iterables that we will see going forward, but for just this purpose, we're going to start off with an array. So take an array, and we can span the contents inside of an array to meet a certain level of criteria. So for example, say a function has 3 parameters, and so you have to pass in 3 different parameters, and the values for the parameters we have is stored in an array. We can actually spread the values of our array across each of those parameter values to give the right value for each parameter. The best way to define that is to actually show an example. So I'll jump over to the code, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. So I'm going to come in here and I go print variables. Okay. For this I'm going to go A, B, C, like so. And for this I'm just going to console.log out each one, so we can see what's populated. Alright. So nothing too interesting here at this stage. Nothing we haven't seen before. Now I'm going to call this function, but I'm going to do it in an interesting way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define an array here called parameters. And I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3. Right? And then what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to try is go print variables. Right? Now we can see at the top here we've got A, B, and C. So the first thing you might try to do is go, well, 1, 2, and 3 matches A, B, and C. This must be what the spread syntax means. So you just pass in the parameters, right? And what you will find when I run this is that, and I'll run this right now, you'll see A is being populated with the array, but B and C are not defined, right? So it's picked up the first argument, and it's gone, oh, you want me to put this into A, so it's printed out A, right? But that's not what we want. We really want the 1 here to be A, we want the 2 here to be B, and we want the 3 here to be C, okay? So how do we do this, right? There's actually 2 ways you can do it, and basically the old way of doing it was to do something like this. You can go print variables dot apply. Now null is just the object instance. Don't worry too much about that. That if this was like a class or an object or something, that would be the object instance. But because we're calling this directly, we just pass in null there. But then you would pass in parameters, right? So this is like your argument list. So this is the old way of doing it in ECMAScript 5 and down. So if I run this, you'll now see you actually get the 1, 2, 3 set, right? But calling apply on things is a bit clunky, and then you have to pass nulls around and all this other stuff, right? It's not the best way to go about it. So what we saw in the previous videos, we saw what we refer to as rest parameters. Now that's kind of one way of passing in multiple arguments, but that's capturing an array. This one is taking an array and spreading it out, so to speak, which is i.e. the spread syntax, spreading out the values across each of the parameters in the function. So how they do that is simply very similar in syntax nature. So we go print variables, we pass in parameters, but instead this time just going parameters, we go ... Alright, so that's similar to what we saw in the previous video, but this now says, please take the contents of whatever's in here and attempt to spread the values across each of the parameters up here. That's essentially what this is saying. Okay, so we'll just quickly try this. As you'll see, we get 1, 2, 3. Right? So it has in fact read 1 at this position, 2 at this position, and 3 at this position, and it spread it. Now this is much cleaner than the one above it, okay? Especially when you have to worry about context. So that's how you can spread parameters in an array across functions. Now, there are a number of other things you can do with spreading and the spread syntax. The other thing you can do, which kind of simplifies concatenating arrays together, is you can do something like this. So we can go var array1 equals, we'll go 1, 2, 3, var array2 equals, let's say 4, 5, 6. Now if I want to combine these two together, then you probably used to be able, you take 1, you would go var concat array equals, then you probably say empty like that, and then you would iterate over the two values of these, and you would push all the values into this array, because you didn't want to have, because if you tried to just refer to it from array 2 like this, well, this becomes an object reference, right? And then if you change anything in this, you're changing array 2 as well, so you can't do that. So you either have to create an empty one and iterate over it, or what you can do these days is you can say, I want to concatenate these two things together, so let's just spread the information over. So go array 1, alright, so grab all the contents of array 1 and spread it into this array, then comma, alright, because this is an array, we can use comma syntax, and we'll spread array 2 as well. Alright, and if I console.log this out, you'll see the final result is a combination of 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. So just look at this, and there you go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is a much easier way of concatenating two arrays together. So that's another useful thing that spreading can be used for. The other thing with spreading too is because this has to be an iterable, you can actually pass it into functions that expect, an infinite number of arguments, or expect a rest parameter, right? So as we had in the previous video, we can now take this array and we can pass it to something that actually supports a parameter, a rest parameter. So if I come up here and go function print rest parameters, like so, then we go, values, like so, and I'm just going to console.log out the values, right? Down here, I can also print rest parameter, passing in concat array, right, as an array, or as a spread, right? This will also work. So I come in here, you'll see it also prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it understands rest parameters as well, which is pretty cool. Right? That's exactly the kind of thing that we can do now. We don't have to worry so much anymore about iterating over things or anything like that. We just literally push things in together by using that 3-dot notation, that spread notation. This also works with existing functions that we have. So an example of this is to maybe have a numbers list of, let's say 4, 5, we'll say 8, 2, 3, and 5, right? What if I want to get the max of this and spit that out? So if I go to console.log math.max, and then normally you would have to go for each number, you would have to go 4, 5, 8, 2, 3, and 5, right? Now you don't have to do this anymore because we can actually use the spread syntax. So I can come here again and do that. right? And it understands that here's all the values I want to check against, get me the max number. So quickly run over, the value should be 8. And there it is, the value is 8. So this works completely for iterables. And basically what iterables are is something that can be iterated over. Now, I haven't spent too much time talking about iterables in ECMAScript 6, but there's a whole set of data types that I'm going to talk about later that allow us to iterate over. Right? Allowed to be iterated over, I should say. But just to start off with, I'm just sticking with arrays because they've always been there. The one thing you can't iterate over yet is objects. Okay, so if I try to take an object, something like var object 1, right, equals, say A is equal to A, and B is equal to B, right? And then I try and do var array, we'll say that fails, equals, we try and create a new array, and we try and pass in object 1, like so. And then we go console.log, array that fails. Now this might seem like common sense that this has failed because this is an object and it's not an array with numbers and values in it. But keep in mind that objects can use a for-in approach, and they can iterate over and enumerate over the properties of the object. So a lot of people will come in and think, well, I can enumerate over all the properties. So if I can spread those properties into an array, so you'd have A, and then you'd have the value of A, and then maybe B, then the value of B, whatever. People may try this, right? Currently this is not supported, okay? It is coming, but it's not supported. So just to show you it's not supported in Node, I'll quickly jump over, I'll clear the screen, and I'll run the code. And as you can see, object 1 symbol iterator is not a function, okay? So it's literally saying object 1 is not a function, or it's not an iterable. It's not a very nice way of saying it, but basically it's saying this is not an iterable. It does not implement this symbol.iterator. Okay, that's what it's basically saying. It's not very clear by the message here, but essentially that's what it's trying to tell us. So that's it for spread syntax. There's a few more other things you can do with it, but just keep in mind that literally you use the spread syntax if you want to expand an array into a number of arguments for a function, or you want to concatenate the values inside of an array inside of another array, like so, or you want to pass them in a parameter that takes an array, or something that accepts a rest parameter. So there's a number of different areas that you can use it. Just basically when you highlight over the IntelliSense here, it'll actually give you the idea of whether you can support it or not with the ... syntax. If that ... syntax is there, and it usually implements an array, right, of some sort, or something that's similar to an array, like as we'll see later on, there are some other data types that will support this spreadable syntax through this ability to have an iterator. But just understand that there are going to be a couple of extra areas that I haven't covered here, but this is primarily what you do with it. Okay, it just makes it simple for you to do certain things, as opposed to the past where we want to concatenate these together. You'd be doing a whole lot of iterating and pushing onto other arrays and things like that. It's much more simplified. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to look at just some extra object-based syntax for object literals. There's been a few things that have changed there in regards to simplicity, and also creating properties that can be calculated, which is an interesting one. Still trying to work out what the main purpose of that is, but I should give you an idea of what that looks like anyway. And then after that, we'll probably look at the let keyword and the const keywords and what they do for us in ECMAScript 6. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.